Hey there, Nina Christian here, and welcome. Hello, and I help people build powerful and emotionally connecting brands using content, thought leadership, and strategic marketing systems to pull it all together. Certainly for large businesses that are highly resourced, those things are a little bit more powerful, of course, but for small businesses, individuals building brands, 2021, needless to say, is just going to be more of the constant change and evolution that we've seen in 2020. Although one of the big things that I would say is I do think that audiences and people are going to be less tolerant and less forgiving for people not operating in a new style of marketing that's sensitive to where they're at any given point in time. So I think there's been a lot of grace extended for people trying to get their act together, and there've been a lot of stuff ups over the year and by people, and to be fair, a lot of them have been called out as well, and that's been tough for a lot of brands and a lot of people. The big difference, what I'm trying to highlight, is that in the past it was really big stuff ups and mistakes that were costing people brand reputation and business. And I think the area or the leeway of room for error is going to shift next year, where in the past, the beginning of the year, I was talking about the fact that you can't put out mediocre content anymore because it's not only not going to get seen, but it's going to have a damaging effect on your brand. If you're just putting out stuff that's half standard and not good, you can't get away with that anymore just for the sake of publishing. Nowadays, you don't publish to be seen, you publish to connect. And if your content isn't connecting, you have to really think about, is it worth publishing? Because the answer is probably not. And so moving into 21, the number one thing on my list around what you need to factor in for your marketing strategy, and I'm talking predominantly around content marketing at this point in time, because more and more of our marketing has shifted into the online space. And yes, while there is a time and place for paid, and depending on what business you're in, you may well be doing paid ads as well. Especially if you're just starting out or you're a business, even doing ads, just normal promotional ads, unless you're some sort of e-commerce business where there's a very high visual element. But for everybody else, content is even starting to play front and center in advertising. So it's the time that you want to get good at content. It's the time that you not only want to, you need to get that connection and to get that cut through. Whether you're trying to connect with someone and you're paying for the opportunity, whether it's via Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Google, or any one of those, you want to ensure that the opportunity that you're paying for, the eyeballs that you're paying to get in front of, that you're actually connecting. And so the things that you need to have for content that connects really high level is that you need to have a high value. You need to be actually giving them something of substance or something engaging through the content. You need to have that wrapped in branding that is memorable and connects and really aligns with you, your values, and your content. Because if it doesn't, you risk having this juxtaposition or this weird kind of, well, you're saying one thing, but your brand is representing something different. And that doesn't really fly anymore, because people are so branding conscious these days. Even young people, even older people, everyone is way more branding attuned. And while they might not be able to articulate it, there are things around branding that will influence whether your message is received or whether there's a disconnect. So high value content is important. And of course, my favorite type of high value content is thought leadership. If you can do entertainment, all power to you. If you can entertain consistently, if you can create great user-generated content, that's also fabulous, where other people are creatively expressing value around your brand. That's the holy grail as well. But the most accessible type of high-value content to most brands, be they business brands or personal brands, is thought leadership, where you are, and it doesn't have to be heavy and long and complicated, but you're sharing some sort of insight or fresh perspective or interpretation of something that helps a person move forward to their next business, professional, or life goal. So if you can do that consistently, this is a great way, A, to build out your ability to express these points, and secondly, to build out your reputation as a thought leader, which will come as you do that consistently. If you're thinking, oh, that's all well and great, but where do I start? All right, in this training, I'm going to give you very quickly 3 things that you can think about, like the 3 layers of thought leadership. And usually I teach this more inside my trainings, but I'm going to share it here because I really want to give you something very practical and very tangible to take away with if you want to start your thought leadership journey. If you're thinking, well, I don't know what to talk about, you know something about something and your perspective has value if you are experienced in that field, you know what you're talking about. And if you know nothing about, like, if you think, well, I'm not an expert or I'm not a highly credible source in any particular area, think about your own journey and what it is. So I work with a lot of young marketers who are just starting out their career, and by far and away, they would not classify themselves as experts or authorities on any particular field. However, to be able to help someone with valuable information, you really only need to be a couple of steps ahead of someone else and where they're at in order to be able to help them. Now, you're not going out to try and help everyone in the world, but there will be some people you can help because you've already gone on a journey and you are uniquely positioned to also remember what it was like to be in their shoes some time ago, whether that's a year or 2 or 3 ago. So in the case of young marketers, they might not go out there and teach about digital marketing or Facebook ads or branding or running ad campaigns or doing media buying or being a creative director or trends in the marketplace or market research. They might not be going out and talking about that, but they might be credible in the journey of being an international student. And they might be credible in having undergone a journey as an international student and being able to talk about their experiences, the ins and outs, their learnings, and the things that they applied. There's another young marketer inside my program who is absolutely really switched on as a young marketer, but wouldn't have necessarily come in themselves as an expert in something and wanted to find something that they could share on and help. And so they thought, well, they did really well in university and they continually got high marks, so they could actually talk about the fact of how to get high marks in, how to get distinctions and high distinctions in marketing. So I realize that a lot of you have roles or businesses, you're not students, but I'm using this as an example to show that even somebody who isn't a perceived expert in a field does have something to share. And it's really about understanding what it is you have to share, why you would even share that, and most importantly, how that aligns to your business and strategic goals. So in the case of the young marketers, it wasn't linked to commercial outcomes and business goals insofar as the content itself, getting people to move further along a journey. The business goal in that instance was really to get familiar with the discipline of expressing one's thought leadership and expressing and showing up and talking about an issue and being able to communicate and articulate that, which, as you can see by scrolling through social media, is an incredibly valuable skill. Being able to express succinctly, concisely in a written format, and being able to express in an audible and ideally even video format. The popularity of these things does ebb and flow. Like 1 month video is hot to trot. 12 months ago, longer videos, kind of 8 to 10 minutes, were doing well on LinkedIn. Then it was 30 seconds to 90-second videos were doing much better. And then it's text and status posts that are by and large are doing better. And there's always exceptions to the rule, but the point is that being at the mercy of an algorithm to some degree means if you have versatility in the way that you can communicate and express your thought leadership, well, you're in a better position than someone who is only relying on video, or who is only relying on the written word, or who is only relying on talking, or who is only relying on visuals and graphics. Like visuals and graphics right at the time of recording this is actually going through quite a transitioning time where a lot of visual output are not getting the engagement on social media platforms that they used to. And so things have gone from having a static image post being popular to, on certain platforms, carousels or animated GIFs or things like that. And these things are not written in stone, set in stone. These things evolve from month to month as the platform evolves. And so trying to get across a particular tactic or tool is short-sighted, because the need is going to evolve for something else. What you're better off doing is focusing on the high quality of the information and ideally transformation that you are sharing, and getting good at articulating that and packaging that, because then you really just tap into the different social platforms of, oh, this is working now, that's working now. You really just pick and choose what's going to work for you at any given time. But developing that discipline of basically becoming a thought leader, and that concept does scare a lot of people, but you have to practice it. And the whole definition of thought leadership is that you have followers. So if somebody is following the thoughts that you're saying, if someone is getting value from that, and you're doing that in a consistent way to the point with where people follow you because of the value that they get from what it is that you share, that would be a definition of modern day thought leadership, which is why Forbes cites that as the fastest growing marketing discipline at the moment. So coming back to how marketing in 2021 and developing that connection, your content has to connect with people. Your content therefore needs to give them something. It needs to give them some relief. It needs to give them some motivation. It needs to give them validation, give them something tactical or something strategic or a fresh perspective, or may open their horizons to something. Oh, I never really thought of that particular point that way. So that's what you can do with your content, and that becomes a discipline. Very, very few people can switch that on overnight. And for large enterprises with highly resourced teams, it's easier because they have multiple people to draw on and to bounce around. But when you're a small business or an individual, it can be tougher. That's why my program, for example, we have a complete methodology for how to extract this content, which is your thought leadership content, and actually go through a process of helping you articulate that and practice that and start to get engagement through that. So because at the end of the day, you want your content to connect. And if your content isn't connecting now, or if you are not practicing that and developing in that skill and actually putting stuff out there, then no one's going to wave a magic wand and then in a year all of a sudden you're going to be this fabulous communicator and you're going to be great at extracting information from yourself. So the way I like to look at it is that you want to become a river. You don't want to be a dam. You don't want to be a swamp either, where everything in there is stale. And what does a river do? A river is moving forward. A river has vibrancy and life to it because the water is flowing through. And that's how it is with our ideas and thoughts. The more we share those, the more they're flowing through, the more that we actually get and the more we allow to come out. So it's really, really cool once you actually start to find the confidence to share and understand how to do that in a way that connects with people. Ultimately, you want people to engage and you want people to be helped by what it is that you're sharing. So that's number one on the connection piece. So number two is for what's going to be needed in 2021 is going to be certainly around the leadership piece for content is what I'm seeing as well. And again, this is going to be very much linked to all of what I just shared about thought leadership, whether that's for an individual or personal. If you're a brand and you're doing marketing or promotion, you're doing financial services or legal services or telecommunications services or something like that, people are not necessarily interested in the nuts and bolts and the nitty-gritty of what's done day in, day out, but they are interested in what it is that you can say or give that is going to communicate the benefit and the value of what you do in a way that is meaningful to them. So some of that may be packaging up what you do and then extracting bits out of that and help and delivering information that's going to serve value. Other times it may be providing commentary. It also may be talking to your values. And one of the big recent studies that's world renowned in the brand space is the Edelman Trust Barometers done each year. And if you look at the statistics around what people are looking for from brands, and these go from small brands to large brands alike, they're looking for brands to wear their heart on their sleeve, basically, and actually be vocal about what they do and don't stand for, be proactive around what they're doing around what they do and don't stand for. And usually that would relate to the industry or area that they're operating in. If someone was in the environmental space or they were creating products and selling something, then eco and sustainability has a higher weight than someone in financial services, for example. It's not to say that someone in financial services can't talk about environmental sustainability and eco-friendliness, but there needs to be somehow a link established, like as to why that's relevant. But where it is relevant, so in financial services, I mean, there's a whole lot of things that they might stand for as values. It might be equitable financial opportunities for people of all races. It might be more equitable gender accessibility to certain things, or it may be the need that the next generation needs to have greater financial literacy, or whatever it is. That's a value that they, the owner of the firm, the person representing the firm, or the firm itself, depending on how it's structured. If that's a value that they hold to, then that needs to be very clearly communicated in the marketplace. And that's going to be a bridge between the brand and the individual in really fostering that connection and that leadership, because people identify and relate to brands that believe in the same thing that they believe in. So in the past, values were things that really were kind of shelved, and maybe they were put into the business plan, or maybe they sat on the company wall somewhere. But these days, they do need to be out there front and center. The studies show 80% of people want to know the values of an organization or a brand or a person that they're doing business with. And so these principles go equally across big brands, small business, even individuals and personal brands. And that is where you can and do, let's say, properly express the values. It really, really helps in bringing that trust factor, which is a necessary part. And that's a kind of another conversation, but definitely nestles in neatly under the leadership thing. So the need for connection, the need for trust, absolutely. And just as an aside that I'll mention around the rise of the personal brand, and I know that this term personal brand can be quite kind of icky and a bit overused, because it's not just about showing up with purple jacket or green hair or whatever people think, a certain type of, I swear a lot, or I have a dog in every picture. That's not personal branding. These are physical identifiers that may help you be more recognizable, but they don't necessarily make people feel emotionally about who it is, what you do, what you stand for, and how you can help them. And that's what the holistic impression of a holistic brand approach will have. And so in our modern climate, where people are experiencing you on different touch points, to think in the old days, you might have just had your one or two customer facing touch points. Nowadays, they might be on your email list. They might be seeing you on LinkedIn, then they go and check you out on Instagram, and then they visit your store or website, or they have a phone conversation with you. Whatever it is, there will be multiple touch points, and there is a need to have those really, really aligned and consistent. My whole point with that is in 2021, this is not now just for business brands. This is seeping down more and more into personal brands, and not just people who are trying to build a personal brand so they can build out a consulting practice or a course or be coach or be an expert in something. Actually, it's even going down to professionals as well, and the way networking is done and jobs are secured, etc. Personal branding is really heightening in importance. So all of what I'm sharing can be applied whether you're a business, whether you're an entrepreneur, or even just an individual building a personal brand. So the last thing is structure and systems. That is where a lot of people get let down. That's where a lot of marketing agencies struggle, because they know what they need to do, but they don't have the time or the resources, or they're constantly stretched between client projects, or if they're an individual doing something, that they're stretched between the business or service that they're actually doing. And marketing and any kind of content marketing, social media marketing, all of what building a brand, all of what we're talking about takes time, takes effort, takes resources, sometimes takes money. It's going to take time or money, but even if you put money, you need time and the right strategy behind it. And that is where a lot of people get stuck, because they know what they need to do, but they don't have the systems in place that really empower that. And so one of the things that I encouraging everyone, I mean, this is exactly what I do inside my program, the Thought Leadership Accelerator, with students, is helping them build out a sustainable workflow and a sustainable system that's going to power their thought leadership, that's going to power their content marketing. So it literally is like input here goes through the process, which is automated. Not automated in the sense of it happens automatically, but it's really clear and laid out so that you are not wasting valuable mental thinking power and going to a place of decision fatigue every time you have to sit down and put out a piece of content or do some social media marketing, because there's a really fine balance between just putting stuff out for the sake of it. And you don't want to do that because of all of what I've explained. It's vital that you are putting stuff out, but grabbing some random free templates or regurgitating the same thing all the time, or only sharing stuff from other people without adding true substance thoughts of your own that really tangibly add value, means your efforts are likely going to be in vain anyway. So there's this balance that you have to put stuff out, but it has to be good. And so trying to do those two things without systems that support that is really, it's a really, really big ask. And so that's what I do inside my program, is literally work out with people, well, what's your strategy? What's your business goals? How's this content going to achieve that? So make sure you got the right ingredients before you even starting. Then what does that look like initially, and what's sustainable, and how you're going to measure it's successful? And when you measure that it's successful, what's your next step? And it's really exciting to see people start really, really small with something that's completely achievable and completely doable, but because it's the right thing that's actually going to help them. It's not this kind of random experimentation here, there, and everywhere, throwing enough mud at the wall, hoping something sticks. It's considered, it's thoughtful, and it's layer upon layer. And then as you add to that, you build out sustainable systems. So we already make enough decisions in our day as business owners, as marketers. We don't want to be having to make so many decisions all the time. You want to make that decision once, validate that it's a good decision, and then tap into that knowledge and process as you go along. That way, when you start to do experimentation and when you start to try things, that they're in a really controlled, consistent environment. It's not scattered and random, because scattered and random just leads to exhaustion, overwhelm, and fatigue. And I think we've all had enough of that. So they are my 3 points. If you have any questions, pop them in the comments. I will respond to each and every one of those. And otherwise, thank you so much for taking the time to watch. If you found any value from this, I'd love it if you shared it with someone. who you feel is actually going to need this type of message and who would get value, who's confused and stuck and frustrated with their marketing at the moment, or who might be wondering about what to do going into 2021 and what should they be focusing on. So the bottom line is you really need to have that holistic strategy in place rather than just trying to focus on tactics, because that's short-sighted and isn't going to get you anywhere. Make sure you leave a comment below. Bye.